One word. No. That's all it took to lose your life in dozens of empires across history. Not folklore, documented law. Real people, real dates, real executions. This is their story. Before we begin, understand this. Nothing you're about to hear is folklore or legend. Every name belongs to a real person. Every date comes from verified historical records. Every law actually existed and was enforced. According to Wikipedia's comprehensive article on capital punishment, which draws from thousands of scholarly sources, execution by the state has been used by nearly all societies since the beginning of recorded civilization. Until the 19th century, without developed prison systems, authorities frequently had no alternative to capital punishment for serious offenses. But here's what history books often skip. Most executions throughout history weren't for violent acts. They were for refusal. Refusing to worship approved gods. Refusing to sign loyalty oaths. Refusing to serve in military forces. Refusing to accept new rulers. Refusing to remain silent. Today, according to Amnesty International data cited on Wikipedia, 56 countries still retain capital punishment, though 111 have abolished it completely. International law now restricts execution to only the most serious crimes, but for most of human history, saying no was serious enough. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted in 1948, now protects freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. These protections didn't exist for the people we're about to discuss. Today, I'm taking you through 2,300 years of documented history where a single word, no, became a sentence of ending. Real people, exact dates, verified locations. This is documented history. Let's begin. We begin in ancient Athens, Greece, the birthplace of democracy and Western philosophy. 399 BCE, Athens, Greece, the state court. His name was Socrates, age 70 years old. Occupation, philosopher and teacher. Crime, refusing to recognize the state-approved gods and corrupting Athenian youth by teaching them to question authority. But here's what this was really about. Refusal. Socrates refused to stop questioning the government. He refused to accept conventional wisdom without examination. He refused to conform to what Athens expected from its citizens. According to Plato's historical account, titled The Apology, written by Socrates' own student shortly after these events, the trial was dramatic. 501 male Athenian citizens served as the jury. The first vote, 280 jurors voted guilty, 221 voted to acquit. If just 30 people had voted differently, Socrates would have walked free. The margin was razor thin. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Under Athenian law, when someone was convicted, they could propose an alternative punishment to what prosecution demanded. The prosecution wanted the ultimate penalty. What did Socrates propose? He suggested that instead of punishment, Athens should reward him with free meals for life at the Prytaneum, a tremendous honor usually reserved for Olympic champions for his service in making citizens think more deeply. You can imagine how well that went over. When the jury reacted poorly, he eventually offered to pay a small fine, but the damage was done. The second vote on punishment. Now 360 jurors voted for the ultimate sentence. His refusal to show deference, to grovel, to beg for mercy, had sealed his fate. But the story of refusal doesn't end there. According to Plato's dialogue Crito, Socrates' wealthy friends arranged everything for his escape. They bribed prison guards, they secured horses, they mapped a route to Thessaly where he'd be welcomed. Escaping was expected, almost traditional for condemned criminals. His friend Crito came to the prison and pleaded with him. Everyone expected him to flee. The prosecution probably counted on it. Socrates refused. His reasoning, as recorded in Crito, was profound. He'd lived his entire 70 years under Athenian law. He'd raised his family under those laws. He'd participated in Athens' democratic system. To break those laws now, even to save his own life, would undermine everything he'd taught about the social contract between citizens and their state. April 10th, 399 BCE, Athens State Prison. On this spring morning, Socrates drank hemlock poison. This was extracted from the Conium maculatum plant, which causes gradual ascending paralysis of the central nervous system. According to Plato's detailed account in Phaedo, multiple witnesses described how the poison worked slowly. Socrates continued philosophical discussions with students as paralysis crept from his feet upward. He walked around the cell to distribute the toxin through his bloodstream, then lay down when his legs grew heavy. The executioner checked periodically, pressing his feet and legs, watching for the paralysis to ascend. When it reached his waist, he briefly uncovered his face and spoke his final recorded words to Crito. "We owe a rooster to Asclepius. Please don't forget to pay the debt." Asclepius was the Greek god of medicine. Sacrificing a rooster to him was customary when cured of illness. Socrates was indicating he viewed passing as a cure for life's illness. He remained conscious until the paralysis reached his heart. Then, as Plato wrote, such was the end of our friend, a man who, we would say, was of all those we have known, the best, and also the wisest and most upright. The prison ruins still exist in Athens today, southwest of the Acropolis. Archaeologists have discovered small drinking vessels in the ancient drainage systems, likely the cups used for administering poison during executions. Modern medical research published in peer-reviewed journals confirms symptoms described in Plato's account match exactly what hemlock poisoning causes: ascending paralysis, retained consciousness until late stages, and the characteristic coldness of extremities. This isn't legend. Multiple independent ancient sources, Plato, Xenophon, and later Aristotle, all confirmed the basic facts. Socrates was tried, convicted, and executed by the Athenian state in 399 BCE for refusing to comply with social and religious expectations. He said no to stopping his questioning. He said no to fleeing. He said no to compromising his principles. Athens responded by making him drink poison. Before we continue with even more shocking historical cases, I need you to take action right now. If this deep dive into verified, documented history is revealing stories you've never heard in school, hit that like button immediately. Here's the reality. YouTube's algorithm actively suppresses educational content like this because it's not advertiser-friendly enough. But every subscription to DarkPast, every notification bell turned on, tells YouTube this matters. We research what mainstream channels ignore. Comment right now, what historical period should we investigate next? Ancient Rome? Medieval Europe? Imperial China? Your input directly shapes future episodes. Now let's continue, because what comes next is even more disturbing. Thomas More, age 57, position Lord High Chancellor of England, the highest legal position in the realm, second only to the king himself. Background: renowned lawyer, diplomat, scholar, author of the philosophical work Utopia. Relationship to the king: close personal friend. According to contemporary accounts by William Roper, More's son-in-law, who witnessed many events, King Henry VIII and More would walk together in the Chelsea Gardens for hours, discussing theology, philosophy, and astronomy. They gazed at stars from Greenwich Palace rooftops. The king trusted More's counsel above nearly anyone else's, until More said no. The 1520s, England. King Henry VIII wanted to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. After over 20 years of marriage, she'd given him only one surviving child, a daughter, Mary. Henry desperately wanted a male heir. He also wanted to marry Anne Boleyn, who might provide sons. But there was a problem. Catherine was the widow of Henry's older brother, Arthur. When Arthur passed away young, Henry married Catherine with special papal permission. Now Henry claimed the marriage had been invalid from the start, citing biblical prohibitions. Pope Clement VII refused the annulment. The reasons were partly theological, partly political. Catherine's nephew was the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, who held significant influence over the papacy. Henry's solution? Break from the Catholic Church entirely and declare himself supreme head of the Church in England. 1534, Westminster, London. Parliament passed two critical laws that would seal Thomas More's fate. First, the Act of Succession, declaring Henry's marriage to Catherine invalid, making Anne Boleyn the legitimate queen, and requiring all subjects to swear an oath acknowledging this succession and rejecting papal authority. Second, the Act of Supremacy, officially declaring Henry VIII supreme head of the Church of England, severing ties with Rome. April 12, 1534, Lambeth Palace, London. Thomas More, along with other prominent citizens, was summoned to swear the oath of succession before royal commissioners, including Thomas Cromwell and Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. Historical records preserved in the British Library document exactly what happened next. More carefully read the oath. He stated he would accept Parliament's right to determine royal succession. That wasn't his concern. But he refused to swear the complete oath. Why? Because the preamble required rejecting papal authority and affirming the king as supreme head of the church. For More, a devout Catholic, this was impossible. He believed papal authority came directly from God through an unbroken line to St. Peter. No earthly king or parliament could override that divine authority. More said no. He was arrested immediately and imprisoned in the London Tower of Bell Tower. For over 1 year, More remained imprisoned. His conditions were harsh, a cold cell with minimal provisions. He was interrogated repeatedly by Thomas Cromwell. His family begged him to comply. Prominent clergy urged him to save himself. More refused every time. In a letter to his daughter, Margaret, dated May 2nd to 3rd, 1535, now preserved in the British Library as Arundel MS 152, More wrote, "I am the King's true faithful subject, and daily pray for His Highness, and all his and all the realm. I do nobody harm. I say none harm, I think none harm, but wish everybody good. And if this is not enough to keep a man alive, in good faith I long not to live." November 1534, Westminster. Parliament wasn't finished. They passed a new Treasons Act specifically designed to ensnare people like More. It declared that anyone who maliciously deprived the king or queen of their dignity, title, or name was guilty of high treason. Read that language carefully. Even silence, not openly supporting the king's new title, could be interpreted as maliciously denying his dignity. Under this law, refusing to speak could constitute treason. July 1st, 1535, Westminster Hall. After 15 months of imprisonment, More was tried for high treason before a special commission. Look at the judges: Thomas Audley, More's replacement as Chancellor; Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk; Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk; George Boleyn, Anne Boleyn's father; and George Boleyn, Anne's brother; and Thomas Cromwell. More was being judged by his successor, by the family of the woman whose marriage he wouldn't recognize, and by the man who'd been pressuring him for over a year. This wasn't justice, it was political theater. The prosecution's main evidence came from Richard Rich, who claimed that during a private conversation in More's cell, More had denied Parliament's authority to make Henry head of the church. More devastated Rich's credibility during cross-examination, but 2 other witnesses present were never called to testify. The jury deliberated less than 15 minutes. Verdict: guilty of high treason. Only after conviction did More speak freely. According to William Roper's eyewitness account, More declared, "For one council or parliament of yours, I have all the councils made these 1,000 years, and for this one kingdom, I have all other Christian realms." He was saying English law doesn't override a millennium of church teaching and the united belief of all Christian nations. July 6th, 1535, Tower Hill, London. Early morning. More was sentenced to be hanged, drawn, and quartered, the standard punishment for traitors. But Henry, perhaps remembering their friendship, commuted it to simple beheading. Multiple eyewitness accounts describe More's final moments. As he climbed the shaky scaffold steps, he joked to the officer, "I pray you see me safe up. For my coming down, I can shift for myself." On the scaffold, he addressed the small crowd, "I die the king's good servant, but God's first." He forgave the executioner, gave him a coin, and asked for a moment to adjust his beard aside, noting it had committed no treason. The executioner's blade fell with one stroke. Here's proof this is documented history, not folklore. More's head was placed on a spike on London Bridge, but his daughter, Margaret Roper, bribed someone to retrieve it before it was discarded. She preserved it in a lead case for the rest of her life. When Margaret passed in 1558, the head was interred in the Roper family vault at St. Dunstan's Church, Canterbury. In 1835, during church repairs, workmen broke into the vault and discovered More's skull behind an iron grill. It remains there today. A floor plaque reads, "Beneath this floor is the vault of the Roper family, in which is interred the head of Sir Thomas More, of illustrious memory, sometime Lord Chancellor of England, beheaded on Tower Hill, July 6, 1535. Physical evidence in a church you can visit today. Thomas More said no to the king. That refusal cost him his head.
Jump forward to the 20th century, the age of modern democracy and human rights. Surely civilized nations had moved beyond executing people for saying no. You'd be completely wrong. 1914 to 1918, the Western Front. During the First World War, saying "I cannot continue" to your commanding officer could result in execution by your own military, not by enemy forces, by your own nation's firing squad. According to military archives documented on Wikipedia, Britain alone executed 306 of its own soldiers during World War I. France executed approximately 600. Italy executed 750. The United States executed 35 after entering the war. These weren't deserters who fled to the enemy. These were men who broke mentally under the unprecedented horrors of industrial warfare and said no when ordered back into hell. September 17, 1916, Carnoy, France. Private Harry Farr, service number 3/6873, Unit 1st Battalion, West Yorkshire Regiment. Age 25 years old. Status married with a young daughter. Military service record enlisted 1908, 8 years of service. Combat record fought at the Battle of Mons in August 1914, one of the first major battles of the war. Medical history: hospitalized multiple times for what documents called nervous shock, what we now recognize as severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Summer 1916, the Battle of the Somme. The Battle of the Somme was one of history's bloodiest conflicts. On the first day alone, July 1, 1916, the British Army suffered 57,470 casualties, including 19,240 fatalities, in a single day. After enduring weeks of this nightmare, Private Farr was ordered back to frontline trenches. According to his court-martial transcript, preserved in the UK National Archives under reference WO/71/481, Farr told his officers he couldn't do it. He was shaking uncontrollably. He told them he'd reached his absolute limit. His company commander reported him for cowardice. September 16, 1916. The court-martial lasted under 1 hour. Farr had no defense counsel, no lawyer to represent him. No medical evidence about his documented psychological trauma was presented. His 8 years of loyal service, his combat experience, his hospitalization for shell shock, none of it was considered relevant. Verdict: guilty of cowardice in the face of the enemy. Sentence: ending by firing squad. 20 hours later, less than 1 full day, the sentence was carried out. September 17th, dawn. Private Harry Farr was taken to a military execution ground. He was tied to a wooden post. A white cloth target was pinned over his heart. 12 soldiers from his own battalion, men he'd served alongside, formed the firing squad. An officer gave the command. 12 rifles fired simultaneously. Harry Farr was gone. His official death certificate lists cause of passing as killed in action, a bureaucratic falsehood that haunted his family for 90 years. His widow, Gertrude, spent decades trying to clear his name, facing social stigma as the wife of an executed coward. September 8, 1914, Tournon, France. Private Thomas Highgate, service number 7/540, Unit 1st Battalion, Royal West Kent Regiment. Age 17 years old. Let me repeat that. 17 years old. He'd lied about his age to enlist at 16. Highgate had been at the Western Front for exactly 5 weeks when British forces began retreating during early battles. Exhausted, terrified, overwhelmed by his first experience of modern warfare, he hid in a barn. The next day, a gamekeeper found him and turned him over to military police. He was court-martialed that same day. The trial lasted approximately 20 minutes. He had no legal representation, just a teenager facing military prosecutors. Verdict: guilty of desertion. The next morning, at dawn, Thomas Highgate became the first British soldier executed during World War I. He was blindfolded, secured to a chair, and shot by a firing squad from his own regiment. He was a child, 17 years old, and they ended his life for being too frightened to continue after 5 weeks of industrial slaughter. The numbers across nations: British Empire, 306 executions; French Republic, approximately 600; Italian Kingdom, 750; German Empire, 48; United States, 35. Different countries, different armies, but identical principle. Refuse military orders during wartime, potentially face execution. These weren't illegal acts, they were lawful under military codes of the era. The British Army Act of 1881, which governed military justice, explicitly authorized capital punishment for desertion, cowardice, sleeping on post, striking a superior officer, and disobedience during active operations. The Manual of Military Law, issued to all British officers, specified exact procedures for court-martials and executions. Everything was done according to regulation. That's what makes it so disturbing. This was systematic, legal, documented execution of soldiers for psychological breakdown. These records still exist. The UK National Archives preserve the complete files: court-martial transcripts, witness testimony, verdicts, appeals, almost universally denied, and execution confirmations. The pattern is consistent. Most trials lasted under 2 hours. Most defendants had minimal or no legal representation. Medical evidence about shell shock was rarely admitted. Previous exemplary service records often didn't matter. The military needed to maintain discipline through fear. August 15, 2006, United Kingdom. 88 years after the war ended, the British government officially granted posthumous pardons to all 306 executed soldiers. Defense Secretary Des Brown stated, "I believe it is better to acknowledge that injustices were clearly done in some cases, even if we cannot say which, and to acknowledge that all these men were victims of the First World War." The government finally admitted many were suffering from what we now call PTSD. They should have received medical treatment, not execution. But for 90 years, their names were associated with cowardice. Their families lived with shame. Their graves often weren't maintained. All because these men said no when they couldn't endure anymore. You might assume that by the mid-20th century, enlightened nations had abandoned executing people for ideological refusal. The opposite occurred. Some of history's largest-scale executions for saying no happened in living memory. 1936 to 1938, Soviet Union, the Great Purge. Under Joseph Stalin's regime, refusing to confess to fabricated crimes, refusing to denounce innocent people, or refusing to demonstrate sufficient enthusiasm for communist ideology could mean execution. According to historian Robert Conquest's research, later confirmed by Soviet archives opened after 1991, over 680,000 people were executed during just these 2 years. March 15, 1938, Moscow, Soviet Union. Nikolai Bukharin, age 49. Background: founding member of the Bolshevik Party, former editor of Pravda, once Stalin's close ally. Crime: ideological deviation, disagreeing with Stalin's policies. After his arrest in February 1937, Bukharin was interrogated for 13 months. He was pressured to confess to impossible crimes: treason, espionage for foreign powers, plotting to overthrow the Soviet government. In March 1938, he was tried in the Third Moscow Show Trial, so named because these trials were theatrical performances designed to intimidate the population. Bukharin initially refused to confess, but after threats against his young wife and infant son, he partially confessed while simultaneously defending his actual political positions. The predetermined verdict: guilty on all charges, sentence ending by firing squad. He was executed the same day the verdict was announced. Decades later, opened Soviet archives confirmed Bukharin was completely innocent. He was executed for ideological independence, for saying no to Stalin's version of communist orthodoxy. February 22, 1943, Munich, Germany. Sophie Scholl, age 21, and Hans Scholl, age 24, siblings, students at Munich University, members of the White Rose resistance group. Their crime? Printing and distributing 6 leaflets calling for passive resistance against Nazi policies. The leaflets criticized the regime's treatment of Jewish citizens and its conduct in the war. February 18, 1943, Sophie and Hans were distributing their 6th leaflet in the university's main courtyard when a janitor who was a Nazi party member spotted them and alerted the Gestapo. They were arrested within minutes. 4 days, just 4 days, they were tried before the People's Court, a Nazi tribunal that handled political cases. The trial was presided over by Roland Freisler, infamous for screaming abuse at defendants. Both Sophie and Hans refused to show remorse. When offered potential leniency if they denounced their actions and pledged loyalty to the regime, both refused. Sophie's statement: "Somebody, after all, had to make a start. What we wrote and said is also believed by many others. They just don't dare express themselves as we did." Verdict: guilty of high treason. Sentence ending by guillotine. The sentence was carried out that same afternoon, February 22, 1943, from arrest to execution, 4 days. According to execution records preserved in German federal archives, Sophie's last words were, "Such a fine sunny day, and I have to go. But how many have to pass on the battlefield in these days? How many young, promising lives? What does mine matter if by our acts thousands are warned and alerted?" 1966 to 1976, People's Republic of China, the Cultural Revolution. Refusing to participate in public self-criticism sessions, refusing to denounce family members or colleagues, or refusing to demonstrate proper revolutionary fervor could result in execution. Chairman Mao Zedong publicly acknowledged in the 1970s that approximately 800,000 people were executed during this decade. Some historians estimate actual numbers were higher. March 5, 1970, Beijing, China. Yu Luca, age 27, occupation, factory worker and writer. Crime, writing an essay titled On Family Background. In this essay, Yu argued that people shouldn't be judged or discriminated against based on their family's political history or social class, a direct challenge to Maoist ideology that divided society into red, revolutionary, and black, counter-revolutionary family backgrounds. The essay circulated widely in underground copies. Yu was arrested in January 1968. For 2 years he was imprisoned and pressured to recant his writings and publicly denounce his views. He refused every time. In 1970, he was tried and convicted of counter-revolutionary activity, sentence ending by firing squad.
10 years later, after Mao's passing and the end of the Cultural Revolution, the Chinese government officially exonerated Yu Luca, acknowledging he'd been wrongly executed. He was posthumously declared a martyr who stood against injustice. But recognition came too late. He'd been executed for writing an essay advocating equal treatment. The 20th century, supposedly the age of enlightenment, human rights, and international law, saw more people executed for saying no than potentially any century before it. Totalitarian regimes on both the political left and right used execution as a tool to enforce ideological conformity. Refuse to comply, face potential ending.
So what connects all these stories across 2,300 years of human civilization? Socrates in 399 BCE, Thomas More in 1535, Harry Farr in 1916, Thomas Highgate in 1914, Nikolai Bukharin in 1938, Sophie and Hans Scholl in 1943, Yu Luoka in 1970. Different millennia, different continents, different political systems, different religions, different ideologies, different languages, different cultures. But one constant thread weaves through every story. When authority demands absolute compliance and someone says no, when someone refuses to worship, refuses to swear, refuses to fight, refuses to confess, refuses to denounce, refuses to conform, power has historically responded with ultimate punishment. These people weren't criminals in any meaningful sense. They didn't harm others, they didn't steal, they didn't commit violence, they didn't destroy property. Their crime was refusal. Their punishment was ending. Today, international law prohibits execution for political, religious, or ideological offenses. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted in 1948 by the United Nations, protects freedom of thought, conscience, and religion in Article 18. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ratified by 173 nations, restricts capital punishment to only the most serious crimes and prohibits it entirely for political offenses. The European Convention on Human Rights and its protocols have abolished capital punishment completely across Europe. But these protections didn't materialize from nowhere. They were written in response to exactly the cases we've discussed and thousands more like them throughout history. Every person who was executed for saying no helped build the case for why such executions are fundamentally wrong. Their suffering wasn't meaningless. It created the foundation for modern human rights. Socrates' prison is now a protected historical site in Athens. Thomas More was canonized as a Catholic saint in 1935. The 306 executed British soldiers received posthumous pardons in 2006. Sophie Scholl is commemorated throughout Germany with schools, streets, and memorials bearing her name. History eventually recognized these executions were unjust, but that recognition came too late for the victims and their families. They said no to power, and power took their lives. But their refusal to comply, their willingness to stand firm even facing ultimate consequences, gave us the freedom we have today. The freedom to say no, the freedom to refuse, the freedom to dissent, the freedom to remain silent, the freedom to think independently. These freedoms were purchased with their lives. If this documentary changed how you understand history and the price of freedom, take 3 actions immediately. First, hit that like button right now. Every like tells YouTube that documented, truthful history matters more than viral entertainment. Second, subscribe to Dark Past and enable all notifications. Next week, we're investigating another law that destroyed thousands of lives, the witch trial statutes of early modern Europe, all documented, all verified, all true. You won't want to miss it. We tell the uncomfortable truths that mainstream channels avoid. We research deeply. We verify thoroughly. We honor the people history tried to forget. Third, comment now. Tell us, what other historical laws should we investigate? The Code of Hammurabi? Roman treason laws? Medieval heresy statutes? Chinese legalism? Your suggestions shape our research. Share this documentary with anyone who thinks history is boring. Share it with anyone who cares about human rights. Share it with anyone who needs to understand why freedom isn't free. One final sobering fact from Amnesty International, documented on Wikipedia. As of 2023, 56 countries still retain capital punishment. In some nations, religious refusal, political dissent, or ideological independence can still result in execution today. The fight for the right to say no isn't ancient history. It's happening right now. This has been Dark Past. Every name was real. Every date was verified. Every fact was documented. We don't tell comfortable stories. We tell the truth. Remember, those who don't learn from history are condemned to repeat it, and the right to say no was paid for with countless lives throughout history. Honor their memory. Defend that right today. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and never forget the price of freedom.